The Giants are going into the All-Star break on a high note. Barely.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. This episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And coming up on today's show, we are going to get into the Giants winning this first half finale against the Minnesota Twins, a much needed win that had, manager Bob Melvin described it as one of their cleaner games that they've played all year until the ninth. And so it was like a good, clean game until the ninth inning. And when we're talking about the ninth, I'm talking about the top of the ninth when we had another issue with Camilo Dval. And so that will be addressed later on in the show, and what I think the Giants need to do. And it's somewhat dramatic. But yeah, I mean, you had a brilliant Blake Snell. You had an offense that scratched across a couple runs early against Chris Paddock. And that was it. I mean, it was 2-0 going into the ninth inning. And ultimately, the Giants walk it off on Mike Yastrzemski, who, unfortunately for him, has just started swinging a great bat recently. Like, his at-bat quality, you could just tell. I mean, the way that he's taking pitches, the pitches that he's swinging at, the way that he's swinging at them, you can just tell that he's locked in. And sure enough, he goes out there and puts together a performance like the one that he put up, which was a 3-for-3 with a walk game. No strikeouts. He had 2 doubles and a triple in this game. 2 doubles and a triple for Yastrzemski. So huge performance. I know there's a lot of Yastrzemski slander out there, but on the season now, that brings him to a weighted runs created plus of 114, which is 14% better than Major League average. And what is his career weighted runs created plus? 114. So he's right exactly at his career norm, which is being about 14% or exactly 14% above Major League average offensively. And so, of course, you have to consider, like, is he facing lefties or not? He did face a lefty in this game. And I think I know he hit a double off of a good left-handed pitcher in Steven Okert, who, the former Giant Steven Okert. And so, yeah, I just wanted to point that out about Yaz. And why I say unfortunately is because he's notoriously such a streaky hitter. And he's also notoriously, like, gotten hurt right in the middle of hot streaks and then missed some time and then come back, and it's taken him forever to get hot again. And he's kind of like Brandon Belt in that way, I guess, just very streaky at times. And so he's, he was asked about this after the game, like, is this one of those times where you don't want the break to happen right now? And his answer was pretty quick, that he's ready for the break. He said he talked about the mental side of it, and that's a, underrated element of this. Like, most of us, we just are in our little home area doing our work or whatever, but, getting days off, getting weekends off, and not out in the sun running around. I know that they're paid a ton of money, but, like, these guys need a break. And so to get just 4 days off. I mean, they don't get weekends off, like they just get a day off here and there a few times a month. And so he was just like, no, I mean, as good as he feels, he's just like, no, mentally, it's really healthy to get this break. So anyway, what was really healthy mentally for fans was the Giants winning this game too, and not just for fans, but for the team, the psychology of the team, because as I said in the last episode, they were either going to be 5 games under 500, 3 games under 500, or 1 game under 500 after this series, because we did an episode on Saturday and the Giants had won the first game. And it was also one of those situations where they've won 6 straight game ones of series. And so they won the first 3 of them, those series, and then they lost 2 in a row. They lost the series despite winning the first game. And then here, they win the first game, they lose the second, and things were looking good. And then it was looking like they might lose again a series. So this would have been a devastating loss. Devastating, maybe a bit strong, but a really tough loss. And they would have been 46-51, 5 games under 500. They would have been 4 games out of a playoff spot. Instead, they finished the first half 47-50. And in the wild card race, which, to be blunt, that's not good enough. They're going to obviously have to play better. They're out of a playoff spot. But they do have a lot of guys coming back. And just generally, I think it's like, this is random, but like often not stated enough how they did lose one of their better players in Jung-Hoo Lee for the season. Like, that's a substantial injury, plus all the injuries in the starting rotation and injuries to guys like Lamont Wade Jr. and Patrick Bailey on the concussion IL a couple of times, Blake Snell in the first half that he had. And we finally saw what peak Blake Snell can look like. And he pitched that way for like 4 straight months last year, how he pitched yesterday, essentially. So, there's a lot of potential for this team in the second half of the season. But as it is now, they're 3 games back. A bunch of the teams ahead of them in the standings lost yesterday, so that was nice. The Giants gained a game on the Cardinals, the Mets, the Diamondbacks, and the Padres, and those are 4 of the 5 teams ahead of them from the second wild card spot all the way on down. The Pirates are ahead of the Giants in the standings by a game and a half. I don't really think the Pirates at the end of the season will be better than the Giants, but they do have some young talent like Paul Skeens, who's starting the All-Star game a year after being drafted number 1 overall. But anyway, 3 games back, 3 games under 500. It's not a great position, but it's not horrible. And so, they're going to get this rest, and then they're going to have guys coming back, and then they're going to play the second half of the season. More than half of the season has passed. This is 97 games that they've played, and so there's only 65 left, and that's way less than half, right? And so 65, if you want to get, I don't know, they're just going to have to play significantly better baseball in the second half, and they have the chance to do it, but they'll just have to go out there and do it. And they've won series against good teams recently, and they had a chance to win that series against the Guardians after winning the first game. Couldn't do it. They really could have won 6 straight series here, but they did recently win series against the Dodgers, the Braves on the road, and the Twins. And those are 3 teams that are certainly in playoff position and well above 500, and some of the better teams in the league. And so that's a good sign, and I'm choosing to look at it that way. But coming up in just a minute, there is one issue that's going on right now, and that is the closer spot. And we didn't really anticipate that coming into the year with Camilo Dval, but it's been a problem pretty much all season, and it reared its ugly head yesterday. So coming up in just a minute, is it time for a change at the closer spot? We'll get into it momentarily. And before we do, today's episode of Locked on Giants is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rivals' cities. And the Giants do. They head to Denver, that's a rival, and then they head to Los Angeles right after the All-Star break. It's Denver and then Los Angeles. And those are two places I've visited this year myself. And I would say that the right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city. And the Giants also, they have a lot of other places on the schedule. They go to Cincinnati, Washington, D.C., Seattle, Milwaukee, San Diego, Baltimore, Kansas City, Arizona. So I just love traveling to watch baseball, and Booking.com has hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. You might just find the perfect stay even in your rival city. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Supplyhouse. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining Supplyhouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every trade master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. All right, here we go. It's time to have the conversation. It's time to have the talk. It's funny how this, it really seems like this happened and it's time for it right at the break. It's kind of a fitting, appropriate pausing moment to evaluate things anyway. And this is one of the huge evaluations the Giants have to make going into the second half. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And everydayers, tomorrow we're going to be breaking down some of the Giants' draft picks. I don't know if the draft concludes today or if it's a 3-day event. I think it might conclude today, but the Giants, they picked 13th overall. They drafted Florida State's, his last James Tibbs III and a big bat in the outfield. So we'll break down that pick and what they did. They didn't have a second or third round pick due to signing qualifying offer free agents, but specifically Snell and Matt Chapman. And so we'll break down the Giants drafting on tomorrow's episode, and then the All-Star games after that, and we'll be talking about that. Logan Webb, Elliot Ramos at the All-Star game. Webb's probably going to pitch. Hopefully Ramos sees some playing time as well. So a lot coming at you this week, even though the Giants are not playing for a little bit. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so it's time to have the talk. It's time to have the talk. And that talk is, do the Giants need to make a change at closer? And in my opinion, the answer is yes. I mean, I don't make that declaration lightly, but this was, there's like a feel thing here, and there's also just a numbers thing going on here. Like, basically, it's a 2-0 game, and in comes Camilo Dval, and it's a contender on the other side in the Twins, a team that's been held down all day offensively. And I don't feel particularly good about him coming into that game. And I know that I'm not alone. And so that's one red flag when you don't feel good about your closer coming into the game. And for the last few years, I have felt very confident in Dval coming into the game, but not this year. Not this year. And so that's, I do believe in the ability of Camilo Dval to get out of this. I think it's largely due to like his struggles with, specifically a 4.38 ERA versus a career ERA of 3.07. So like a run, 1.31 runs more per 9 innings this season in just 37 innings than his career average, which is over about 200 innings, 199 and a third. But, he's still getting a lot of ground balls, but it's the walk rate is 14%. Last year, it was just 9.3%. And so just too many walks. It comes out to he's walking at almost 6 batters per 9 innings, which is just too many. He's walked almost as many batters already this year as he walked all of last year. And this year he's thrown 37 innings. Last year he threw 67 and 2/3. And he's 2 walks away from matching last year's total. We're talking non-intentional walks, unintentional walks. And so, yeah, I mean, he just hasn't, there's numbers like first pitch strike rate that I could find. It's actually higher this year than it was last year. His first pitch strike rate is 2 points. It's actually like almost a career best, but I guess he's getting ahead and then nibbling too much or something. I don't know if it's just command with specific pitches. It's not working out, and it's a stark contrast when you look at Ryan Walker, who, there was almost like a changing of the guard on the mound during the game because Dval blew the save and he hadn't thrown that many pitches and the go-ahead run was on second. And so if this was just a blip on the radar for Dval, you've got the All-Star break coming up. He's not, you don't have to worry about rest. He had only thrown 18 pitches and 11 of them were strikes. So it wasn't just strike throwing, but he did walk the leadoff hitter. That's part of the issue too, is like, it's not just about strikes. It's about the walks. If you end up walking the guy, that's a problem. But anyway, he was getting hit too. And if we look at the kind of numbers based on getting hit or not, opponents have a 347 average on balls in play against him, which is just really high. Probably one of the higher marks in the majors, I would guess. And that can kind of be looked at as fluky, which is why, again, I'm not like cutting Dval from my team at all. I think he's a very good reliever. Career ERA, again, 3.07. Fielding independent pitching, 3.07, an exact match. So I believe he can be a low 3s ERA guy, like basically moving forward. He's only 27 years old. He just turned 27 like 11 days ago. But the thing is, Ryan Walker comes in, go-ahead run on second. It's a fast runner. And Walker with 1 out, and he gets 2 outs on 2 pitches. He gets a ground out to second, and I believe it was a fly out to left on 2 pitches. And Dval, labored through 18 pitches and allowed 2 hits, 2 runs, a walk, and he did strike out 1. But Ryan Walker, ironically, given his name, he does not walk people. His walk rate this season is 5.2% versus, again, 14% for Dval. So that's a huge difference. Camilo Dval's strikeout rate is 28.7% this year. Ryan Walker's is 32%. And the home runs per 9 innings for Walker, who's pitched 50 and a third innings, by the way, versus only 37 for Dval. They're both not really allowing homers, but Walker's been better. But this is home runs per 9 is kind of not something you want to look at in a small sample. In Walker's career, he's allowed 0.89 home runs per nine, whereas Dval's allowed 0.63. Dval has a better career ground ball rate. So Walker, does get the ball in the air more than Dval. But at the same time, Walker has just been so good and consistent. ERA is 2.32. Expected ERA 2.83. Fielding independent pitching 2.43. We're talking just like twos across the board. And he's just been so consistent. And that's what I'm saying. There was the one blip, like he had a rough outing recently, and that was like kind of it. But otherwise, he's just been ultra reliable. And so I do indeed think that it's time to make a switch at the closer position. And I don't think it's very controversial to say. The bigger question is, will they do it? Will Bob Melvin kind of give in and react to what's probably just a blip for Dval? It's a blip over an extended period of time. But ultimately, when his career is done, I think this little period will look like an outlier. I don't think this is who Dval is. But every game is precious, especially given the Giants' position in the standings. And Walker seems like nothing phases him. He doesn't seem like overwhelmed by the moment. Case in point, coming in yesterday with the go-ahead run on second and 1 out and just getting 2 outs on 2 pitches and just threw 2 pitches. They were obviously both strikes because they were swung at. And I don't know. Teams just can't really hit this guy. Career ERA is 2.82. Fielding independent pitching is 3.11. For Dval, it's 3.07. So we're talking like similar type performance, but Ryan Walker walks fewer guys, ironically, again. But Dval gets more ground balls. But this season, you got to kind of read and react. And the right now, like if it's a 1-run game, I've said this a couple times now this season, I'm not comfortable with Dval simply because he's likely or liable to not be able to find the strike zone. And that's a big problem in close games. And when the games matter so much because you don't have some sort of comfortable lead in the standings. So anyway, that's my opinion. It's not the first time I've talked about this, but I do think the fact that Walker came in when Dval could have kept pitching indicates that they very well may go to Ryan Walker in the next save situation, but they got to ease off him a little bit. He's pitched so many innings, already 50 and a third versus, well, he pitched a total of 80 and 2/3 last season between the minors and the majors. So that's a big workload. So they probably want to ease off him a little bit, but yeah, I do think it's time. Anyway, coming up in just a minute, another huge thing happened in this game, and that was that Blake Snell looked like vintage Blake Snell, and he was perfect through 6 innings pitched. And so we're going to get into the outing for Snell, the walk-off by the Giants, and what Snell's, outing being so great means for this team moving forward. So all of that in just a minute. And before we get into it, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't have to be so stressful. And for me, I love going to MLB games on the road especially, but also at home during the summertime, visiting new cities, like I said earlier. I've been doing it for years, kind of just going to other stadiums and watching games, and Game Time has been a game changer for me when it comes to buying tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last minute deals, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, my personal favorite. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. The Game Time guarantee, by the way, means if you can find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, here we go. We're going to get into Blake Snell just having a remarkable outing, which is a great way for him to close out his first half, and what it means for this team going forward to have potentially that Blake Snell and not the Blake Snell we saw for the first half, actual half of the season. His last two starts since coming off the IL have been really, really good, and that is a great sign. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day, everydayers. Tomorrow we're going to be breaking down the Giants draft, and then later on in the week we'll be talking about the All-Star game, hopefully a good showing by Logan Webb, who I assume will pitch in that game, and Elliot Ramos will possibly play in that game, and so I'm looking forward to that, and we'll have reaction to that as well. And the Home Run Derby is tonight, so enjoy that too. So, by the way, a reminder that you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So Blake Snell, it has been a tumultuous first season in San Francisco, and I emphasize first season in San Francisco because he seems very likely to not opt out, which I don't have a problem with at all. I mean, because if he opts in for next year, you're getting Blake Snell on a 1-year deal for, there's deferrals, so the average annual value is considered to be $29.7 million, even though it's kind of technically $31 million if you divide the $62 million over 2 years in half. So anyway, Snell pitches a perfect game into the 7th here yesterday and completes 7 innings on only 80 pitches, 55 strikes, 35. Would that be? 25 balls. 25 balls and 55 strikes. Is that possibly correct? I feel like I need to, obviously that, yeah. 80 pitches, 55 strikes for Blake Snell. That's kind of incredible. So, wow. Better than a 2-to-1 strike to ball ratio. For Snell, obviously, I mean, not obviously, but he had no walks. He did have a perfect game going into the 7th, so that was obviously going into the 7th. No walks, no hits, no errors. And in the 7th, he allowed a leadoff single to Manuel Margot, who later had a huge double that tied the game in the 9th off Dval. But it was just a dominant outing, and you could tell right away that his mechanics were good. He was in sync. His body was moving the way it's supposed to move, and the pitches were coming out with sharpness, crispness, life. And that was the Blake Snell that we basically saw for the last 4 months of the season last year as he just steamrolled his way through the National League en route to his second Cy Young Award. He started out the season poorly last year and ended up with a 2.25 ERA. It was like 8 or 10 starts into the season, his ERA was in the 5s, and then he ended up with a 2.25 on the season because he had a historic run of dominance over his last 20-something starts. So I'm not saying he's going to do that again, but I am saying the guy who had an ERA of 10 was never who we should have expected moving forward. And I've said that over and over, that any given outing, as long as he's healthy, I expect him to be pretty darn good, and the last 2 have been pretty darn good. And on the season now, the ERA is still bloated at 6.31. It is just 35 2/3 innings, as he has twice missed about a month with a groin injury. But 6.31 ERA, but the expected ERA is 3.58. The fielding independent pitching is 3.78, and all the projections are mid-3s as well. And so this is a guy, as long as he's healthy, I would expect to put up kind of mid-3s ERAs and a mid-3s ERA in the second half of the season. And so for the Giants to get that guy, along with Logan Webb, their all-star pitcher, along with Robbie Ray and Alex Cobb coming off the injured list, along with Kyle Harrison, Hayden Birdsong, suddenly you're looking at a very dangerous rotation. And I've said this a million times, but to actually see Blake Snell go out and do it was important because we just didn't see it for the first large part of the season. It wasn't until July, essentially, that Snell had a good outing. So his last 2 outings have been scoreless, 12 innings, 11 strikeouts, 3 walks, 2 hits. 2 hits in 39 batters faced and 3 walks. And this last outing was by far his best of the season. His previous outing before this one was his best outing of the season. He hadn't even pitched he hadn't completed 5 innings at any point until his last start. And then this start, completing 7 on just 80 pitches. It was just kind of brilliant Blake Snell at his very best. And so, a shame, no perfect game, but, Bob Melvin kind of indicated they may have had to take him out even in the midst of a perfect game, given that he's coming off this injury and he's not built up to extend his pitch count like that. And so also worth noting, the league just has not touched him. He allowed 1 hit in his last start too. So he's allowed just 1 hit in each of his last 2 starts. So when he's at his best, this is what he does. He did this to the Giants multiple times last year, just absolutely dominated them. And he absolutely dominated a good Twins team, missing some players, but still a good Twins team yesterday. And then the Giants ultimately walked it off on a Yastrzemski triple. I got into kind of talking about Yastrzemski a little bit, but he hits a triple, his 3rd hit of the day, plus a walk, 2 doubles, triple. And then Brooks Lee, the rookie for the Twins, just completely airmails a throw to third base when he didn't even need to make a throw at all. Yastrzemski was in at third easily. So making a throw was a total rookie mistake by Brooks Lee there, and it just flew over the third baseman's head into the Giants' dugout. Yastrzemski was already standing at third, so he gets to come home, and that's how they win. It was their 9th walk-off of the season, which is tied for the most in the major leagues. So the Giants, yes, it's been overall what I would classify as a disappointing first half at 47-50, but they've had a flair for the dramatic, and not just at home. They've had that game in New York against the Mets with the barehanded play by Chapman, full count, bases loaded, 1-run game. That was extremely clutch, and I feel like Bailey hit a clutch homer in one of those games in New York again for the 2nd time in 2 years. So they've had a flair for the dramatic and some huge comeback tendencies and some walk-off thrilling win tendencies. So that's been fun, but overall they're going to have to clean it up in the second half. But guys coming back healthy, and maybe Ryan Walker nailing things down a little more consistently than Dval in the 9th will help them do that. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be breaking down the Giants draft picks and then talking about the All-Star game later on in the week and getting you set for the second half of the season and what they must do to make the playoffs. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.